Here's why you're hungry and tired all the time.
Whenever you eat food, it causes an increase in your glucose levels. And something like this or this may cause a spike. Compared to sticking to foods like this that are more protein and fat, might just cause a little rise. But in general, starch and sugary carbs will spike and protein and fat will not. Now the problem is the higher glucose spikes, the greater comes crashing down. Because a higher spike leads to more insulin release. And your body releases so much insulin you get this crash called hypoglycemia, leaving you hungry and tired. Now come in the snacks, creating another spike and another crash. And your whole day just goes with these spikes and crashes, leaving you hungry and tired, and now you think something's wrong with you.
What was described in this video is what is now being referred to as the carbohydrate-insulin model of obesity. Essentially, it indicates that the consumption of carbohydrates increases the production of insulin, which stimulates cells to uptake glucose out of the bloodstream, reducing the amount of circulating fuels available in the bloodstream. This basically causes your brain to freak out and think that it's starving, which stimulates your appetite to eat more, and therefore you passively overconsume calories. And foods with the highest glycemic index, which lead to the most rapid increase in blood glucose and insulin, are the most likely to cause this rebound hypoglycemia and stimulate you to eat more and become obese. Proponents of this theory typically use graphs like this that indicate protein and fat are good because they lead to a small blood glucose and insulin response. But carbohydrates are bad because they lead to a large blood glucose and blood insulin response. Now that we know the theory, what does the evidence say? First of all, the idea that insulin itself increases your appetite is false, because insulin actually binds to receptors in the brain to reduce appetite. So in a state of high insulin, you will actually be satiated. However, this theory postulates that it is a few hours after the meal, when your glucose comes crashing down and you begin to overconsume calories. Let's look at a few studies. This study looked at the influence of blood glucose and insulin responses to a meal and its effects on satiety, and subsequent food intake. They indicated that when given a 240 calorie portion size, foods that elicited the highest blood insulin response also elicited the greatest satiety response, which is the opposite of what is stated in the carbohydrate-insulin theory. This study looked at the association between postprandial insulin and blood glucose responses, and appetite sensations and energy intake. They indicated the higher the postprandial insulin response, the lower the subject's appetite was and the less calories that they consumed in subsequent meals. This study looked at the association between glycemic index, satiety, and energy intake, and indicated that the blood glucose and insulin response to a meal had no impact on subsequent energy intake, which they even mentioned provides no evidence to support the hypothesis that the carbohydrate-insulin model of obesity actually exists. This study lays it all out in the title, indicating that there is no difference in body weight decreases between a low glycemic and high glycemic weight loss diet. This study, looking at the effect of glycemic index at breakfast, found that whether or not the breakfast was low or high glycemic, it made no difference on subsequent energy intake. There are far too many more studies to cover all of them, but they all indicate the same thing and were summarized in this review by Kevin Hall. Several logical consequences of the carbohydrate-insulin model have recently been investigated, and the results failed to support the key model predictions. Therefore, the model is too simplistic because the most important facets of this model have been experimentally falsified.